Most veterans are making the same retirement mistake. They are picking towns based on VA hospital proximity and cost of living lists they found on Google. That is the wrong filter entirely. By the time those lists go mainstream, the affordability window has already closed. The veterans who are actually ahead of this, combat deployed, multiple tours, they are using 3 criteria nobody publishes: water independence, energy resilience, community density of people who already think like them. 7 towns in America check all 3 boxes right now. Land and home prices in 4 of them have already moved. The other 3 are still in the quiet window. You are going to know all 7 today. Most people reading relocation guides right now will find out about these places 18 months too late. This is not a cost of living ranking. This is not a weather preference list. Every town in this breakdown was evaluated on infrastructure independence, veteran population density, and grid-down survivability. If a town scores high on all 3, it made the list. If it scores high on 2 and fails the 3rd, it did not. That filter eliminated over 200 candidates. Shenandoah Valley floor elevation sits at 1,300 feet. That single number eliminates most flood risk, most heat dome intensity, and most of the infrastructure fragility that comes with coastal proximity. Staunton sits right in that corridor. Most people drive through this town on I-81 and never stop. The ones who stopped are not leaving. Here is what most people miss. Fort Defiance is 12 minutes away. That is not a footnote. That is a veteran density anchor that shapes the entire county's culture, mutual aid instincts, organized response thinking, and a community that does not need to be convinced that self-reliance matters. You are not arriving somewhere and trying to build that from scratch. You are walking into something already operational. Augusta County has one of the most productive small farm ecosystems in the entire mid-Atlantic region. You are not importing food from 3 states away. You are buying direct from producers within 20 miles. Stack on top of that, Staunton's downtown core never hollowed out the way most small American cities did through the 90s and 2000s. The social infrastructure is intact. Hardware stores, medical, independent grocers, all present and functional. That matters enormously in any disruption scenario, because community cohesion is not something you rebuild quickly once it breaks. Median home prices here still sit below $290,000 for a 3-bedroom with land. That number is moving. Remote workers from Northern Virginia discovered this valley 2 years ago, and they are not leaving either. Every quarter from here compresses what you can afford to buy. Compare that to a veteran retiring to a Phoenix suburb, grid tied to a regional system, water dependent on Colorado River allocations that are already in active legal dispute, and a neighbor density that makes mutual aid functionally impossible. Staunton is not the same calculation, not even close. Tennessee is one of 9 states in the country with no state income tax. In a prolonged economic disruption, that is not a lifestyle perk. That is a survival variable. Every dollar you keep is a dollar you do not need to earn inside a broken economy. When cash reserves are the difference between 6 months of stability and crisis, your tax burden determines how long you last. Here is what most people miss. The Tennessee Valley Authority hydroelectric infrastructure is the single most realistic localized power restoration scenario anywhere on the East Coast. When the national grid is down for months, TVA dam systems produce electricity the same way they did in 1940, waterfalls. Turbines spin, power returns, no fuel deliveries required, no functioning national supply chain required. Morristown sits inside that restoration radius. While the rest of the country waits for grid repair crews, communities inside the TVA footprint have a realistic path to localized electricity within weeks. Hamblin County has a functioning agricultural base: cattle, corn, hay, truck farming. The food supply chain does not require interstate highways to stay open. Stack the Cherokee Lake access directly north of town. Fresh water, protein via fishing, irrigation capacity. This is not decorative scenery. This is working infrastructure. The lake does not stop functioning because a supply chain broke somewhere. Homes on half-acre to 2-acre lots in Hamblin County are still trading between $210,000 and $260,000. Comparable properties in Knoxville's suburban ring are $80,000 higher for less land. That gap closes every single year. A veteran retiring to coastal South Carolina gets mild winters and scenery, and a power grid tied to 6 other states. One substation failure in Georgia blacks out their neighborhood for weeks. Morristown keeps the lights on through infrastructure that has not needed permission from a federal interconnect system since the 1930s. Wyoming has fewer than 600,000 total residents. The entire state holds fewer people than most mid-size American cities. Now divide Wyoming's total coal, natural gas, and water reserves by that population number. Run that calculation yourself. The result is not incremental. It is orders of magnitude above any coastal alternative. Screenshot that number. It is the single most important calculation most people relocating after service have never run. Here is what most people miss. In any prolonged collapse scenario, energy commodities become the dominant barter currency. This is documented, not theoretical. Bosnian economic collapse records show fuel outvalued cash within weeks of infrastructure failure. Cody sits in Park County, surrounded by that energy reserve base. In a barter economy, geographic proximity to commodities is the primary asset. The people nearest the resource control the trade. That is not speculation. That is history repeating. Cody's veteran population density is among the highest per capita in Wyoming. This is a working town. Ranching, outfitting, extraction industry. The skills base is functional and applied. People here operate without Amazon Prime delivering solutions to their door. That self-sufficiency is cultural, not performative. Stack the Shoshone River access and the agricultural land directly east of town, and you have water and food production that does not depend on municipal systems staying intact. Acreage properties outside Cody are still accessible in the $350,000 to $500,000 range for parcels with water rights. Water rights in Wyoming are a separate legal asset class. They transfer with property, but they are finite. Once those parcels sell, they do not return to market. A veteran retiring to coastal California on a fixed income faces state income tax, water use restrictions, wildfire exposure, and a power grid that performs planned outages as official policy. Cody does not have that problem set. The math is not comparable. If this breakdown is changing how you are thinking about where you land after service, stay with this. The next 4 towns include the one location almost nobody puts on a veteran relocation list, and it has infrastructure advantages that outperform everything shown so far. Otero County sits at 4,300 feet elevation. That altitude eliminates the temperature extremes that make low desert survival brutal. You are not managing 115-degree Phoenix summers. You are managing a genuine 4-season climate that most people never associate with New Mexico because they have only seen the state from I-10 at the lowest elevations. Here is what most people miss. Holloman Air Force Base creates a permanent military culture anchor in this town. This is not a veteran-friendly marketing slogan on a welcome sign. This is active duty, contractor, and veteran population living side by side in a community that runs on discipline, logistics, and contingency thinking by default. You do not have to explain your worldview here. It is already the shared operating assumption. Sacramento Mountains directly east of town provide the critical resource layer, Lincoln National Forest, timber, game, and freshwater springs fed by snowmelt that flow independent of municipal systems. The Tularosa Basin Aquifer sits beneath the town itself. That is not a future resource. That is current, accessible, functioning water infrastructure. Stack New Mexico's low property tax rate on top, and the fixed income sustainability math works in a way that Florida or Arizona cannot match dollar for dollar. 3-bedroom homes in Alamogordo are still trading under $220,000. For a veteran using VA loan benefits with zero down, the monthly payment math works on almost any military pension. That affordability equation is genuinely rare in 2024, and it is narrowing every quarter. Compare that to a veteran retiring near a major metro VA hospital hub, surrounded by urban density, zero food production capacity within 50 miles, and total grid dependence. Alamogordo gives you VA access at Holloman and self-sufficiency infrastructure at the same address. Most towns force you to choose between the two. Lake Pendorale holds over 40 cubic miles of fresh water. That is the largest lake in Idaho and one of the deepest in North America. The gravity-fed spring systems feeding Bonner County do not require an electric pump to deliver water to a collection point. When every well pump in the county is dead because the grid is down, gravity still works. Water still flows downhill. That is a specification most people never think about until it is too late to act on it. Here is what most people miss. The Boise to Sandpoint corridor is the veteran migration pipeline that demographic analysts are only beginning to track. Military families are relocating along that stretch at a rate that is reshaping county demographics. Voter registration patterns, school enrollment, small business formation. You are not moving somewhere and hoping a community builds around you over a decade. You are joining a migration that is already in full motion. Northern Idaho's timber base means firewood, building material, and game habitat all exist within walking distance of residential parcels. Canuxu National Forest directly borders Bonner County, public land access for hunting and foraging, with no permission required and no waiting lists. Stack geothermal potential in the broader region, and you have passive heating options through winters that would collapse a standard propane-dependent setup inside 30 days. Lot prices in Bonner County jumped 14% in the last 18 months. Waterfront and water access properties are already in competitive bidding situations. The inland parcels, still accessible, still rational in price, are the ones closing right now. A veteran buying in Western Washington gets rainfall and evergreen trees and a power grid tied to California's demand spikes and managed outages. Sandpoint gives you the same landscape with energy independence and a community that does not need persuading. ERCOT, The Electric Reliability Council of Texas does not answer to the federal interconnect system. When the eastern or western grid cascades into failure, Texas operates on its own infrastructure. That is not a political statement. That is an engineering specification that changes every single survival calculation inside state borders. While the rest of the country sits dark waiting for repair crews, Texas is running on a system that has never needed outside permission to function. Here is what most people miss. Texas carries the highest raw veteran population of any state in the country, but Kerrville specifically sits in the hill country corridor where that veteran density concentrates. Retired officers, special operations community, career NCOs who chose this region deliberately. The informal mutual aid network that takes other communities years or decades to build already exists here. It has been operational for a long time. You are not recruiting, you are arriving. The Guadalupe River runs directly through Kerrville, clean, year-round, gravity-accessible fresh water inside city limits. Kerr County's agricultural base produces cattle, goats, hay, and truck crops without depending on supply chains that cross state lines. Texas refining capacity means fuel does not need to arrive from another state. Stack zero state income tax on top, and the fixed income math on a military pension is among the most favorable in the entire country. Kerrville has been discovered by the Austin overflow migration. Home prices have moved from the low 200,000s to the mid 300,000s in 36 months. The rural parcels outside city limits, the ones with river or creek frontage, are moving fastest. That inventory does not rebuild once it sells. A veteran retiring to a northeast corridor state faces state income tax, grid dependence, high property taxes, and a cultural environment where self-reliance is not a shared value. Kerrville is operating under an entirely different set of rules. Heber Valley sits at 5,600 feet elevation inside a natural geographic bowl surrounded by the Wasatch and Winter Mountain ranges. Those ranges are not scenery. They are natural terrain choke points on every major access route into the valley. The same feature military planners look for in base placement decisions. You do not stumble into Heber Valley. You have to choose to come here. That single geographic fact changes the entire security calculation. Here is what most people miss. Heber City's proximity to Dugway Proving Ground and Hill Air Force Base creates a military adjacency that shapes local culture without generating the congestion and transient population turnover that comes with active duty cycling. The people here are not rotating out every 3 years. They stayed. They chose this place the same way you are choosing it now. That permanence creates community depth that no base town can replicate. The Provo River and Jordanelle Reservoir create water infrastructure inside the valley that does not depend on municipal treatment systems for basic access. Heber Valley's agricultural legacy, dairy, beef, hay operations, is not historical. These operations are active and current. Food production within the valley is real. Stack Utah's energy position, with coal and natural gas reserves inside state borders, and fuel supply does not have to cross 3 state lines to reach you. This is the one entry on this list where the price window is already partially closed. Heber City was discovered by Salt Lake overflow buyers 3 years ago, but the surrounding Wasatch County parcels, away from the resort adjacency, away from the Deer Valley premium, still represent value that the Wasatch Front cannot touch. Those parcels are the specific target. Most veterans looking at Utah default to St. George, hot, water-stressed, increasingly congested, and grid-dependent in ways the state's reputation does not reflect. Heber City is the answer to what St. George was supposed to be before everyone found it. Here is what every town on this list shares. Water access that functions when municipal systems fail. Energy infrastructure that does not depend on a national grid staying intact. A veteran community density that provides organized capability from day one. No recruiting, no convincing, no building from scratch. Those are the 3 non-negotiable variables. Every town here passes all 3. Most towns in America fail at least one. Most of the towns on the popular relocation lists fail too. Before the next video, there is one practical layer worth adding right now. When you are physically walking parcels in any of these towns, you need to be able to evaluate water quality on site before you sign anything. A Sawyer Squeeze water filter, available at Academy Sports, Bass Pro Shops, or REI, tells you immediately what you are working with from any spring, creek, or surface source on the property. Do not walk a parcel without one. For communication independence during scouting trips, before you have local contacts established and before you know what cell coverage looks like in the area, a Garmin InReach Mini 2 satellite communicator, available at REI or directly from Garmin's website, means you are never unreachable in rural terrain regardless of cell infrastructure. And for the parcel evaluation itself, carrying your documentation, maps, and testing kit organized and accessible, a Filson tin cloth field bag, available at Filson's website or at Bass Pro Shops, is built for exactly this kind of field work. These are not lifestyle products. These are evaluation tools that separate a serious site assessment from a wishful drive-through. Land prices across all 7 towns are moving every quarter. The affordability window on the quiet entries, Staunton, Alamogordo, Heber City, is compressing in real time. The next video breaks down the exact property evaluation checklist, what to look for on any parcel, what to walk away from immediately, and the 5 deal breakers most veteran buyers never check before closing. Everyone else will start thinking about this after it matters. You just finished.